Welcome back. In this lecture, we're going to talk about animation montages and what they are and why they're useful. Now, thus far, we've been using different animation poses based on state machines. We have various states, and each state can contain animation poses, and we switch between these states based on transition rules, which contain conditional logic. This transition rule here checks our ground speed, and if it's greater than 0, we're allowed to transition from idle to run. And we'll see that reflected by our character's pose, changing from idle to a running pose. Now, this is a good way to take care of animation states, as these conditions are constantly checked. And as soon as the ground speed is greater than 0, we see that change in pose immediately. But for some game mechanics, we may not want to use state machines, but instead we might want to play an animation a single time in response to something happening in the game. Animation montages are great for this. You can think of a montage as a sort of container for one or more animations. For example, we might have a montage called Attack Montage, which contains 2 attack animations. Now, in a montage, we can create sections associated with animations in the montage. And then we can play the montage with a function call, specifying what montage to play and what section to jump to. This is great for one-off actions, like attacking. So we're going to make an attack montage. Now, in order to set up attacking for our character, we'll need a few things. For one, we should go into our action mappings and create a new action mapping for attacking. We can link this up to a type of input, such as the left mouse button. Now, if we're going to make an action mapping, that means we'll need a callback, such as an attack function, and we can bind that to our attack action mapping. This means that when we click the left mouse button, our attack function will be called. From there, we need to decide what happens in the attack function. Well, we'd like to play an animation montage, and in order to do that, we have to access the anim instance. And from the anim instance, we can play an animation montage specifying which montage to play. So we have a number of steps here, and we're going to take this one by one, first implementing this in blueprints, and then moving on to C++. So let's get started. Now, the first thing we need to do is set up an action mapping so that we can press a button and get a function called in response. So we'll go to Edit, Project Settings, scroll down to Input, and open up our action mappings. Now we have Jump and Equip. We'd like one for attacking, so let's click plus, and we'll make one called Attack. And I can click on the keyboard icon and left-click for a second time to get my left mouse button linked up to the attack action mapping. Now, before we move on to C++ and start implementing this behavior, let's quickly get it working in blueprints as a sort of prototype. So let's go into our blueprints folder, open characters, and get our BP/character open. And here we can right-click and type attack, and here's our action event that was created as soon as we made that attack action mapping. We're going to want to do something in response to our left mouse button being clicked, which means we need an animation montage. Now, we're going to make an animation montage and add some animations to it, which means we need an attack animation. So this brings us back to Mixamo. Now, I'm going to type in axe to the search bar and see if we can find some attack animations for the axe as we're using a single-handed weapon. Here's a standing melee attack where the character is simply slicing down. This is a great one, so I'm going to click Download, and I'm going to choose Without Skin. Now, in addition to this attack, I'd like another one as well, so let's take a look at any of these other animations, such as this one, which looks pretty cool because the animation makes the character spin all the way around. I like this one, so I'm going to download it, but go ahead and choose an attack animation that you like. Now, I mentioned that you may not like that shambling running forward animation for the character, and if you like, you can choose another running forward animation. Just in case you'd like to do that, I'm going to download another running forward animation for the character. Here's a different running forward animation, and I've checked in place, and I'm going to go ahead and download this one as well. Now that I have 3 new animations, I'm going to show them in my downloads folder. And here they are along with my other animations. Now I'm going to get my Assets folder open, go into Mixamo Animations, and get these 3 new animations in. Let's go ahead and just move them to the Animations folder, and now I can import these 3. We have Unarmed Run Forward and Standing Melee Attack 360 and Attack Downward. So here in my project, I'm going to go to my Mixamo folder, into Xbot and Animations, and click Import. Now in my slash folder, in Assets, Mixamo, Animations, I can get both of my Standing Melee Attack animations simply holding Control and left-clicking to select multiple animations, and I'm also going to get that Unarmed Run Forward and click Open. Now I do need to select the Mixamo skeleton, which is SK Xbot. And since I'm importing multiple animations, I can click Import All. And now I have 3 new animations. Here's one, that 360-degree attack, which looks pretty awesome. I also have Standing Melee Attack Downward, which is a little bit slower. And I have Unarmed Run Forward, which looks like this. Now that we have these animations, we need to retarget them to Echo. That means we need to use our IK retargeter here in Xbot in the Rigs folder. So here in our Xbot IK retargeter, we can take a look at what these animations look like. Here's the Standing Melee Attack 360, here's the other attack, and here's the Unarmed Run Forward. We'll see how this looks on Echo in the game. So I'm going to select our 3 new unsaved animations, which have a little asterisk next to them. That's how I know they're new. And I simply held Control as I left-clicked to select multiple. And I'm going to click Export Selected Animations and choose my folder Blueprints, Characters, Animations, and click OK. And now they're retargeted to Echo. Now that I have a new running animation, I'm just going to go into Echo's animation blueprint and see how that looks in the game before we continue. Now I know that the running animation is used in Echo main states, so I can open that animation, go into the run state, and here we have our jog forward animation, and for equipped one-handed weapon pose, I can search for that new one, Unarmed Run Forward Retargeted. And hooking that in, I can go ahead and grab a weapon in the game and see how that looks. And I'm not too thrilled with it, so I don't think I'm going to use it. But hey, I tried. So I'm going to go back and use Standing Run Forward instead. I don't really like that animation, not going to use it. But you can always go back to Mixamo and see if you can find a better running animation or use an animation from elsewhere. But we now have attack animations, which is what we're going to use now to create an animation montage. So let's do that. Here in our Blueprints, Characters, Animations folder, we can create a new animation montage. And this can be done in a number of ways. If we right-click in the gray area and go to Animation, we can select Animation Montage. Now we do need to select the proper skeleton. We're using Echo, so we're going to select Echo Skeleton, and I can call this Attack Montage. And we can also prefix the name with AM underscore for Animation Montage. Now let's open this up, and here is the montage editor. And it looks similar to our other editors, but we have this middle part down here at the bottom, which has several sections to it. And we can access our animations through the asset browser at the bottom right. And if you don't see the asset browser, simply go to Window and enable the asset browser right here. Now we can search for animations that we want to use. I can search for attack, and I see that I have these attack animations. Looks like we already had a attack horizontal that we've retargeted. Now we can drag animations into our montage. For example, I have Standing Melee Attack Horizontal. That's the one we already had. I can click and drag this in, and I have to drag it into the default group right here. If I click and drag and release, I now get a green bar that shows the name of the animation. And I can even press play down at the bottom to play this animation. So our montage now contains an animation inside of it, and we can actually contain multiple animations. For example, I can take my Attack 360 and drag it onto the default group section and release. And now we have 2 animations. And we see that these animations run into each other. The first one plays, and then the second one plays. Now, animation montages can have multiple sections to them. We can section the montage off and name each section. Each montage has a default section called default. That's this purple default here. But we can right-click on the top bar here and select New Montage Section, and we're prompted to create a section name. I can call this Attack 1. And we now have an Attack 1 montage section. And I can click on the purple arrow to drag it around and select where I'd like this section to start. I'd like it to start at the very beginning of the first attack animation, so I can drag it over there. Now I have several things on top of each other right here. I have the scrubber, which is the red icon that I can use to scrub through the animation. I'm going to scrub that off to the side, and now I see that I have my default section and my Attack 1 section on top of each other. Now I can right-click up at the very top where the numbers are, and this allows me to move left and right to see these sections a bit better. And I can hold Control on the keyboard and middle mouse wheel to scroll up and zoom in. Now clicking on a section highlights it, and what I want to do is get that default group away from that first spot. So moving the scrubber away, I can click on the purple arrow to drag a section out. Now I may be dragging out the Attack 1 section. That's not the one I want, so if that's the one I have, I can bring it back to the beginning, release the mouse button, and click again and get the default section. I want to delete this default section, so I can right-click on it and delete montage section. And now my montage starts off at the Attack 1 section. Now I'd like to have another section starting at the second animation, and I can right-click here, select New Montage Section, and name it. I'm going to call it Attack 2. Now if I hold Control and middle mouse wheel in, I can see that my Attack 2 section is not exactly starting at this second animation. So I can click and drag the arrow to stick it right between the two, so Section 2 starts right there at the second animation. Now, placing sections here in our montage is useful because when we play a montage, we can choose a section to jump to. Now, I'm going to show you something else related to sections, and that's here in the Montage Sections tab. If you don't have the Montage Sections tab, you can go to Window and check the checkbox for Montage Sections. Now, notice right here it says Preview Attack 1 with an arrow moving into Attack 2. This means that if we play this montage, starting at the Attack 1 section, when the Attack 1 animation finishes, the montage will play the next section, Attack 2. But if we click the clear button, this won't happen. If we play Attack 1, we'll just play that animation, and we won't run into the Attack 2 animation. Now, if that's what we wanted, if we wanted to play Attack 1 and automatically go into the Attack 2 animation, we can click this white box that says Pick the next section, and we can choose Attack 2. I'm going to click Clear again. So the Montage Sections tab is something to always check to make sure that you have the correct behavior that you want. So now we have an animation montage, and it contains 2 attack animations. We'd like to be able to play this montage. Now, in order to play an animation montage, there's a key step that we have to do. A montage can be associated with something called a slot. A slot is nothing more than a tag or a label. By default, when you create an animation montage, it's assigned to the default slot. We can see that here under Montage, where it says default group.default slot. If we attempt to play a montage associated with a given slot, we have to let our animation blueprint know that we're using that slot. Here's how we do it. We're going to go back to our main animation blueprint called ABP Echo. And just before the output pose, we're going to drag off from our linked anim graph and type slot. And we can get a node that says default slot. And this node is assigned to the default slot. Now we can create custom slots that have different names, and we'll do that later, but for now, it's enough for us to just have our pose running through the default slot. This means that if we play any montages assigned to the default slot, we'll actually have that animation played in our pose data. Essentially, it'll override our character's pose. So now that we have an attack animation using the default slot, and we've run our pose through the default slot in our animation blueprint, let's see how we can play our montage. Back in /character, we have our input action called attack, and we'd like to play a montage. Now, functions for playing montages exist on the anim instance class. Our animation blueprint is an anim instance, and we can always access the anim instance through our character's mesh. So I'm going to click on mesh and drag it out, and from mesh, I'm going to type get anim instance and select that. Now from the anim instance, we can access functions on the anim instance class. I'm going to drag off of get anim instance and type montage, and we have this function montage play. I'm going to select that and hook it up to the pressed execution pin from our input action attack. Now montage play allows us to select a montage to play. We can select one from the dropdown. Now some of these montages exist because we migrated them over along with Echo from Valley of the Ancient, but we're interested in our attack montage called AM Attack Montage. Now montage play has a number of inputs, including a play rate. We can choose to play the animation faster or slower. Leaving it at 1 plays it at the regular speed. Now the function does return a value of type float. We can choose what this float is with our return value type. By default, it returns the length of the montage. We can also specify a time to start the montage at if we don't want to start it at the beginning. And the Boolean stop all montages means that when this function gets called, if we're already playing other montages, it'll stop those and play this one instead. So the result of this is that when we press our left mouse button, this input action will respond to that. We'll get the anim instance from our mesh and call montage play, specifying our new attack montage. Now we're not specifying a montage section, so it's going to play the very first one by default. Let's go ahead and click play and grab a weapon. And now I can press the left mouse button. And now Echo plays the attack animation, which looks great. Now what if we want to play one of the montage sections specifically? Well, we can get our anim instance, drag off of it, and choose montage jump to section. And this node allows us to specify a montage section to play. We pass it in to the section name input, which is a name, and we can type a name in to the text box, such as attack 2. That's the name of our second montage section. Now it does need to know which montage we're jumping to a section in, so we have to select the montage AM attack montage here. And now we can compile, press play, and grab a weapon, and go ahead and attack. And now we're playing that second animation montage section. And that looks great. Now the montage takes over the whole body. So if I attack and start running, we'll start sliding. And that's an issue we'll take care of later. So don't worry about that. For now, it's enough to know that we can play an attack montage with the click of a button, so that's great. Now another issue is that we can spam the left mouse button, and that means we'll start playing the montage multiple times, interrupting itself. So that's another issue that we will take care of very soon. But for now, we have the ability to attack, which is awesome. Now we know how to do this in blueprints, but our goal is to do this from C++, and we'll do that in the next video. Great job. I'll see you soon.